Welcome to Hard Knock Life. I'm Keith Chow.
I'm Britney Monet.
And I'm Jamal Michelle.
What's up, everybody? How you guys doing?
Hey, Keith, you were in Vanity Fair, kid. that was pretty nifty.
Yeah, I was totally surprised by that. I had no idea that I'm an essential podcast to listen to. Not this one, unfortunately. Not Hard Knock Life.
It's unclear whether they knew you're involved in this whole fruit basket of podcasts. But I'm glad they picked out Southern Fried Asian. You know, they were doing sort of a roundup of Asian American podcasts, and they've centered on Southern Fried Asian. And yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, did they ask you to do a tasteful nude spread? Because Vanity Fair is really good at those.
Yeah. That Herb Ritz called, and even though he's dead, and said, "Would you like to?" And I said, "No, thanks."
Ah, well, maybe.
But no, it was like I said, it was a total surprise. I'm honored. They put Lee Isaac Chung and Minari in the write-up, and I've been trying to get him on the podcast. So hopefully, now that they've paired Minari and Southern Fried Asian in the same write-up in Vanity Fair, it'll be a lot easier for his publicist to say yes to having him on the podcast.
Yeah, easier to manifest.
Does he have Southern background?
Yeah, I mean, Minari's is basically autobiographical about his childhood in Arkansas.
Oh, okay, Arkansas.
So, yeah. I don't think I think he's originally from Atlanta and then moved to Arkansas, but yeah, he's definitely got Southern roots. Yeah, so if you're listening, Lee Isaac Chung, before you win your Oscar, please come on the podcast. Please come on the podcast before you win the Oscar, because I'm sure once you win the Oscar, you'll definitely not come on this dinky little podcast. But, no, I appreciate that. What's going on with you guys? What renowned fashion magazines were you guys in this weekend?
I was in none, but I just got my second dose this morning for the shot. So.
Nice.
Cool.
You're the first fully vaccinated nerd of color, I guess.
Yeah, I was excited. And then after that, I went to this punk-themed coffee shop we have in Southern California called Rad Coffee. And got myself one of their little Pop-Tarts they have. And
was the coffee rad?
Oh, yeah, it was. I got their Great White, which is 4 shots of espresso with half and half and white mocha sauce shaken up.
Wow.
Really good.
So you're ready to go on this. You're totally energized to be on this podcast right now.
Oh, yeah.
It didn't give you superhuman powers?
I mean, that and the vaccine, I'm just I think I can crawl on walls now.
Cool.
Basically, the super soldier serum.
Yeah.
You found yourself in Madripoor without any Asians and got yourself some super soldier serum.
That was the first thing I noticed on that. I was like, where are the Asian people on this episode? Besides, what's his name?
Desmond Chum. Yeah, I was gonna say we got to finally see his face on the show. Desmond Chum. He's actually a friend of the Nerds of Color. Hopefully, we can get him on the podcast soon. And he got cast on Falcon Winter Soldier a while back, and now we saw him in the first episode. He was the guy in the mask who punches Torres, and we see him maskless for the first time. So Asian representation in the episode. Ironically, not in the Asian part of the world that they were in for 90% of the episode. Well, let's get into it. Let's talk about our weekly.
You didn't even ask Jamal how he's doing.
No, we don't care.
Oh, wow.
I'm vibing. I get my shot on Tuesday. I'm chilling. I'm ready to talk.
Is it your second shot?
No, the first.
Oh, okay.
So I'm gonna get my first.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right on.
So let's get into it. Let's talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which we're wont to do on this podcast since there are weekly episodes now. They found themselves in Madripoor, broke out Zemo. Daniel Bruhl playing a completely different character from the one he played in Civil War, I feel like.
Yes.
I'm just getting super weird vibes from this series now. It's just weird. There are a lot of weird tropes they're leaning into, and I mean, my guy, you killed King T'Chaka. I don't care how funny you are. What? Which the ending of the episode, the most recent episode, made me super hyped. I mean, I think it was the most hype I was for the whole series so far. The music dropped, and we get just really dope reveal at that point. But
yeah,
it's
so
just
let's get spoilers
weird.
ahead.
Yeah,
we're going to be spoiling some things. But yeah, Jamal's mentioning there is a Black Panther character cameo at the end. Funny enough, if you didn't watch live, or if you didn't watch before what Twitter did, for some reason Okoye was trending on Twitter for the majority of Friday and Saturday. And you're thinking, that's interesting. Why is Okoye trending? And you watch the show, and Okoye is nowhere in the show, but bald black women all look the same to white folk, I guess.
Different person. Also, Dora Milaje, different person.
Yeah.
Is it Io?
Io. She was Io.
Io, yeah.
Who played Io. And they were doing all these nods to Civil War. She made her debut, and so she was the one who says, move or you will be moved.
You will be moved, yeah. Iconic.
Iconic line. And,
she's been around longer than Okoye, actually.
Yeah.
To Jamal's point, it was a weird episode. I don't know how I feel about, because we were, you know, for the first 2 weeks, we were kind of cautiously optimistic about how will the show tackle race, how will the show, like, keeps bringing up all of these powerful things in the Marvel Comics history, like Isaiah Bradley, and it's almost like that whole scene with his sister in episode 1, which was very powerful. Like, how can this man who saved the world not get alone? And it feels like the payoff for that whole premise is for, like, a joke in episode 3 where his sister blows his cover. Like, that's the only reason they set that up. Not to make any commentary on, you know, racial discrimination in the banking industry, but so he could get his cover blown in episode 3. What did you guys think about that part of the episode?
I didn't clock it till you just said that.
Yeah.
Like, I did read it. I'm like, oh, shoot, that's so true. But then also, I feel like it's a glossing over of the important stuff. And then I also have a huge issue with the group being called the Flag Smashers, despite the things that they're doing being quite important. Like, they're helping all the displaced folk who have no access to the things that are being hoarded by the problematic entities that we're supposed to root for, because like, I don't like that. And I just don't like the direction some of it is going. I hope there's a turn where we get a little more, like, humanity given to those, because there's that weird moment where I forgot the character's name, but she, like, blows up the car.
Yeah, Carly, she's the main flag smasher.
Carly, that seemed so nonsensical, and just for us to be upset at the flag smashers. Right. She's like, this is the only language they know. No, her character does not want to do that, but it's to advance the plot as them as the, you know, anarchist bad guys. Anarchy's a good thing. So
yeah. And that was the scene. That was the scene we saw Desmond in, where he plays. I think his name is Dovich on the show, and he's the second in command, the big burly guy. And, you know, he's taken aback. So he's like, wait, this is not what we do, basically. And to show, to your point, sow dissension in the ranks of the Flag Smashers. But we said this last week, right? Like, when we found out their motto was one world, one people. Like, these are the bad guys? It sounds... Yeah. World Without Borders sounds pretty cool to me.
Yeah, I think it still comes down to, at the end of the day, that it is a Disney production, Disney capitalism. Like, I think there is still going to be, you know, some glossing over things or trying to make, you know, what is actually the right thing, which will hurt corporations and stuff, is not, you know, what they're going to be for. So obviously they're going to paint them as the bad guys, and they are a little bit too extreme and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, even though she is very light-skinned and, you know, she is a Black woman. So it just makes it very interesting that you have a Black woman who's leading this, and she's the one who, like, you know, bought the car, whatever. It's like, oh, this is not what we do. This is like, it's kind of like adding this, like, oh, you know, Black women are aggressive, and like, I feel like that kind of added to that. But I'm not gonna lie, I actually did as a whole enjoy this episode. I don't know. And yes, I do agree that even though it was a different Zimmo, I thought he was hilarious. And I really loved the moment when they were talking about Marvin Gaye. And he was like, it really captures the African-American experience. And Sam was just like, oh, no, you took it too far, but he's not wrong. Like, I was dying. That was funny.
Yeah.
Did we not think that was sort of textbook performative allyship? And I'm not against, like, performative allyship. Like, trying is better than not trying, but I just thought that was a funny, like...
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, Daniel Bruhl was actually great as Baron Zemo in this episode. But my issue is that, like, how does that character jive with the character we met in Civil War, right? Just in his whole presentation. Of course, like, yeah, he's got the furry coat and the purple mask. That's great that he looks like the comic books now, and he's a rich guy. Like,
exactly.
There was no indication that dude was, like, royalty in Civil War, was there? Like,
no.
They said he was part of a Sokovian military death squad.
It felt like it was just shoehorned into that, because they're like, well, you have access to anything, so that's how we can get the Falcon and Winter Soldier moving from point A to point B. And they give him this weird raspy, he sounds more raspy than the first one. I was so hung up on it. I was telling my wife, I'm like, he wasn't this Batman-esque in Civil War. Like, you didn't do this raspy thing. It was a lot more subtle and refined. But
like, in my most optimistic self, I thought that it would be like Black Panther in the way that, you know, the quote-unquote villain brought up a subject that it's important to have discourse about, and it's like something they did in Black Panther. Like, in a shorthand way, they told us he was the villain because he just, like, likes killing people a little bit too much. We get that. He's a little too quick to killing people. But there's a very important topic about Black liberation being brought forward, And, in Falcon and Winter Soldier, I thought the two most interesting things that so far that they've introduced are, who are the Flag Smashers, and also the history of this other Captain America. And then, for some reason, I feel like, Jamal, other people I was talking to also felt like this episode also went off a cliff for some reason. And I think it's partially because they pivoted away from that and leaned into the buddy action comedy trope, which we get that we're doing, but part of the buddy action comedy trope is we make really bad plans. And somehow this whole episode was about our really, really stupid plan. Makes no sense. Break out Zemo because we need him to guide us around the town. Yes. And, let our side characters kind of bail us out of shit. And we'll see if we can loop out of that. Yeah. But that's like on the leads as being these sort of prototypical, like, action heroes, like, we just get shit done. We have bad ideas and they work out, and that's, we're worried about that.
I think part of for me, the frustration, the writing seems lazy, but at the same time, not urgent, even though we're already halfway through the end, right? There's only 6 episodes of Falcon Winter Soldier, so we're at the halfway point, and shit still doesn't make any damn sense, right? And when I say lazy writing, I feel like what Jamal was saying about Zemo being just like rich because reasons, like we were joking about last week how the easiest thing to do for superheroes is to put a billionaire there, like Tony Stark and Ollie Queen, and Bruce Wayne just happen to be rich, and that's why we don't have to worry about finances. And so, like, because they wrote themselves in a corner with Falcon can't get a loan, how are we going to get to, like, the far side of the earth if we need to? Well, let's just find a rich guy. And even with Sharon Carter's whole deal being, like, on the lam, however, she's also an art dealer, like, on the black market, like, for reasons, and now she's got this lavish palace in Hightown. It was just like, what is going on? Who's making this shit up, man?
And I also feel like maybe because Sharon doesn't really have much of a personality, honestly, I think, in the other 2 movies. And then with Zemo, his main thing was getting revenge, that there's, that was the main focus of his plot line, that it's like, yes, maybe that there was wiggle room to do what they're doing now, but I feel like that's also when you have 2 different creators working on things and they're like, oh, well, they didn't say that this was a no for this character, so we can do it now. So it doesn't translate as well when you have 2 different people writing it.
Typically these kinds of things don't bother me. Like I'm pretty like let the chips fall where they may, as long as it makes sense. And that, but I think the problem with the MCU is that it's so predicated on everything is connected. That its whole deal is one little thing that happens in Captain America: First Avenger will pay off 5 movies later. Kevin Feige is worshipped as a god because everything is so tightly connected.
But you risk losing that continuity when you switch writers and when people leave a project because the damn thing's going on for so long, or you drag a story out for too long, or just like how I feel like Sharon and Baron are like shadows of themselves or their former selves because they're so different from Civil War. Even the lack of her personality, to Britney's point, in the previous films, there was still this strange like introduction of a totally different person. And I'm just like, wait, Sharon,
why does she have to be an art dealer on the black market? Like, I don't even get that. Like,
because she's the most useful friend you can possibly have. Sharon, like, when you need some gear stolen, she's there and she takes the hit for it. And then when you're lost in Magic 4, oh, I'm here and like I know everybody. And I fight.
And I'm stuck. I can't move from here. I have to stay here.
Well, that's the thing that I don't get either. Like, so they pardoned Bucky, but Cap couldn't get Sharon pardoned in the last 5 years? Like,
he didn't know she was doing that, right? Like, apparently, was that the thing? Because she made it seem like everything was happening behind closed doors. And
I don't know. I just feel like
I don't know if they're setting her up to be more of a villain, just because certain scenes with her felt very like,
dark, right? Like,
that's
sinister.
why I'm like, are they setting her up to be kind of?
I thought she was gonna be Black Cat from the Spider-Man universe, but that would be a leap.
Oh boy, that'd be crazy. Whoa, that would be crazy.
Where she says, "Really, my name is Felicia." Like that's.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah, but hold on. At the end there, we get that strange thing with her where she's going back to her car that shows up, right? It's like the super nice. I think it was like a Porsche or some shit. And her driver, I don't think she says anything, but Sharon's like, "Yeah, we have multiple problems now. We'll have to look into it." So, like Brittany, you said, it might be something happening here that will be revealed, but things just felt so awkwardly placed because reasons.
I mean, and again, I feel like if it felt like it was building towards something, I might let it slide. But we're at the halfway point. And people were complaining about WandaVision at this point, right? By episode 4 of WandaVision, like, the plot's not going anywhere, blah, 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 blah. But, I felt like at least they were doing something interesting. I think my issue with Falcon Winter Soldier is that they're dropping, like, little interesting nuggets, but they're not doing anything with them. Like I said, like, Isaiah Bradley, maybe it'll come back later and something will happen. I think it was confirmed that the kid who opened the door for them is actually Eli Bradley, so he is the once and future Patriot, so, who knows. But all of those little things, again, the scene with the whole setup with Falcon and his sister, and all these things are really interesting and ripe for unpacking in a superhero show, and they're just, like, tossed off, And that's the thing that bothers me, is that, like, I don't know that they'll go anywhere with them.
Yeah. And I was also going to say, I don't know if it's because, a huge portion of the MCU fan base are white people, and I don't know if it's trying to... like, let's tell the things about racism, but let's also, like, make sure we're not doing it too hard where white people are turned off by the story, and I feel like that's why there's also this glossing over that it feels like, and adding maybe a little bit too much comedy in certain areas where you don't need it, just because they're still trying to, keep their white audience, like, engaged, because, a lot of people still have issues with, Sam picking up the shield, like there are genuine people who have an issue with it. So I think they're trying to, like, make Sam be more appealing to the white people, so that like, when he does get the shield, everyone's like, yeah, and I feel like it's also kind of hindering their story, though, because they're trying to appease white people in a way. That's what it feels like.
Well, that's interesting, especially, since you run the Black Lightning podcast, and I know that's the Akil's, I feel like when you watch Black Lightning, and to be fair, I haven't watched in a few seasons. But,
that's fine.
But I know those first few seasons, like, it never felt like what you were saying, where they're just assuming the CW superhero audience, they have to kind of, like, cater to the white gaze. I felt like, they're all just playing real characters, and some things are going to go over white folks' heads if they're watching, and if not, they're not going to step back and, like, explain things, right? And some of it, like, especially season 1, was a little on the nose, like,
yeah.
But like, do you, like, if you were just to compare, since your other podcast is talking about a black superhero show that's unafraid to tackle issues of race and allow their blackness to be front and center, versus something like this, like, how would you compare? I mean, maybe it's not even fair to compare the two, but
yeah, well, or just not a predominantly black audience where they don't feel like, like, they feel like they have to, not be too intense with the talking about racism, because Black Lightning does a really good job of it. And then there's some things, because we know that there's a lot of, like, for our podcast, we know there's watchers who are not black and they don't understand maybe certain things, and when we explain it, we've gotten emails and feedback like, wow, like, I didn't even realize, like, this was a thing. But yeah, I think because you have both two black people who are running the show, like, everyone, almost predominantly most of the people behind the scenes are, black people, except for Greg Berlanti, who's just, like, pretty much is the money, the guy who signs the checks, basically. So I feel like there's a difference between when that person is just kind of letting them do what they want to do and tell a story, versus, like, there's a little, Kevin Feige really likes to make sure certain things are going a certain way. So I think because of needing to appease everybody, that's why I think certain stories don't hit the way they should.
I mean, that's interesting. I mean, Malcolm Spellman is an African-American showrunner.
Yes, he's also light-skinned, and I don't know if he's mixed. And, like, I have to be honest that there's a different experience that for those of us who are light-skinned, we have a different experience than those who are dark-skinned. Like, I'm light-skinned, and sometimes, like, if you've seen a picture of me, if I'm standing in the sun, I look like I'm almost white. Which, I mean, yeah, I am half white, but still, like, so my experience is going to be different than it would be of, Sam and Sarah's experience, navigating this world as Black people. So when you have someone who is unfortunately, lighter skinned telling a story of, like, darker skinned Black people, it might not hit the same. It might be there because, yeah, they've experienced, racism, microaggressions, but it's not going to be the same, like, Sam and Sarah actually would. So that probably also plays a little bit into why it feels like there's a little bit of a gloss over. So yeah, I don't know, but I feel like that could be part of it.
You either risk glossing over, or I feel like it might be one of two writing worlds or one of two writing approaches. If you don't have enough people of color in that writing room, helping, to facilitate that conversation, it's either you lean into those stereotypes, which you'll get shit on immediately. People will call you out on it on Twitter, on social media, if you lean into the stereotypes because you don't have the full experience behind you, or you gloss over because you get to bring it attention, but you don't have to go too deep into it where you'll be talking quote unquote out of turn. I mean, I don't like that phrase, but yeah, I think that just speaks to the folks in the writing room and who needs to be involved. You know, that isn't to say that Malcolm isn't doing a good enough job, but it's like involve as many people as you can, get multiple perspectives so characters are fleshed out, and maybe those moments are not just like a ploy where Sam can say on the phone, "I'm going to kill that banker."
Yeah, that was weird.
And then that's where the significance ends. Yeah, it was very funny. I was so stupefied by that too. I'm like, wait, what's happening? And then, you know, they're shooting their way out of it.
It does seem that Sam's story is really decentered after, you know, the building blocks of his story were well laid out in the first 2 episodes. And they take all of them completely out of their element and this new world, and probably just introducing like way too many things at once. That's just one way I looked at it. You know, but I had also mentioned that I've had snake before. I've had a snake cocktail. It's not that big a deal. So there are all these.
What is that? What was put in it? Was it like an egg or like a snake testy, or?
I don't know the whole recipe. But, I mean,
because he cut out the thing and then
snake shot the blood. Like sometimes you eat snake in parts, like you eat the meat, and then separately you have the blood, like in a little shot glass, sort of. I mean, that's kind of what I had. And some Chinese folk that think it's a kind of aphrodisiac or something. But you would have something like a little snake blood shot glass.
Did you bump against the fact that there were no Asians in Madripoor? Because I'm actually of two minds about that. Because on the one hand, when Chris Claremont created Madripoor, it wasn't like Madripoor was this great example of like representation in comics to begin with, right? Like it was a very kind of white guy's fantasy of a exotic Orientalist, you know.
Yeah. Let's say it was an analog for Singapore or Hong Kong, Taiwan, sort of a mishmash.
So on the one hand, I'm kind of like, you know what, if there's no, like, I wasn't that upset there are no Asians in Madripoor, let's just say. Right. If there were a bunch of Asians in Madripoor, again, it's not like the greatest example of representation for Asians anyway. So at least it wasn't all even though there were a lot of Eastern Europeans there, but like.
Yeah, but there are plenty of dark-skinned people there. I think they wanted to make it kind of
cosmopolitan
mishmash of various people with not a particular Asian identification, and that's fine. I mean, I think they actually didn't paint the world real well, except that it's very shiny. And, you know, we know there's a Tagalog song playing in the club, which indicates we're in a different place because they don't play that in clubs in America.
Well, it's also like one of the things that feels odd in the Marvel universe is when they do go to a fictional country, because that's the thing that separates Marvel from DC so much, right? Like every country in DC is fake. Like there is no real world in the DC universe. It's Gotham City and Central City and Metropolis and
Coast City and Keystone.
Well, you know, like there's a Corto Maltese and the just fake countries, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like Marvel, like their whole selling point is like it exists in New York City and it's the real. Where like Wolverine goes to Japan for good or ill, right?
Yeah. So the Black Panther crew went to Korea. It was a cool moment. It felt very in the world, even though they were coming from a fictional country. And when
they do use a fictional country, it's like it's very well thought out, like Wakanda. Like Wakanda is the only example of like a fictionalized world. It's world building. Like you kind of don't need to world build if you're using the real world. And so when you do world build, you have to make sure that it makes sense. So like they spend an entire 15-minute prologue explaining why Wakanda is Wakanda, right? And so, to me, like, just going into Madripoor, or even, like, in Iron Fist with, like, Kunlun and stuff, like, whenever they use, like, or maybe it's just an example of, like, fictionalized Asian countries are still, like, exotic and weird. You don't have to worry about actual world building, because you can just play the card of, like, well, it's just a Orientalist fantasy world, so just go with it, you know?
Yeah, there's an element of that, but I do think, like, you know, as you say, it could go either way, like, if it was just, like, an island of kung fu thugs, like I don't think that like it helps anything.
I'm not going to be cheering.
I think it's fine, and
either, you know.
And I think it's a great point that Marvel did this one case of world building the fictional place so well. It kind of compare things to that because they set up everything about Wakanda so like evocatively. And I'm annoyed that like Sokovia is such a big deal. Like, why do we have to like come back to? Oh, who knows? We need to know so much about Sokovia in every freaking Marvel.
Well, and it's weird too because apparently Sokovia doesn't exist anymore. Like they had a whole like international law about Sokovia, but according to Zemo, the neighboring countries carved it up and it doesn't exist anymore. So like
that's wild. But I also felt like they were trying to make Mandripoor look more like John Wick kind of stuff, like the places that he goes to.
Yeah,
it felt like that.
They were going for the city of John Wick, totally.
John Wickistan.
And I thought so. I thought it looked like it had that vibe to it. And I don't know. When I think of Madripoor, though, I think of my favorite Spider-Woman graphic novel, Agent Sword one, where she goes to like beat up some scrolls. And I was just like, oh, is Jessica Drew going to show up, please?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I was thinking watching
but
it.
Then again, Britney watches anything and wonders how Jessica Drew could fit in there.
Yes.
So, like, that's kind of
I always do. Yeah.
She's always welcome.
I mean, she was in Hydra. She probably would have known Bucky.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Winter Spider. That's my ship.
Can I just say again, optimistically, that if there's one thing I hope that happens, I do hope that Isaiah Bradley ends up going to Wakanda. And I don't know if that sounds like a stupid thing to say, but like a recurring theme is like Bucky at this time in Wakanda that was very restorative to him, and there's a whole story there that we may never see, but it was a big deal for him. And it just seems like the way they set up, if any guy ever, deserved to go visit Wakanda, it's this Isaiah Bradley guy.
Yes,
he's been through a fucking lot.
I know, he deserves
anyway,
it.
I don't know if that's in the card staff, and I just kind of...
Well, I will say I was surprised that they're including like Wakanda into the storyline. I think to Jamal's point earlier, Ayo's cameo at the end was a holy shit moment. I was not expecting. It was almost like when War Machine showed up in the first episode. Like, oh wow, Don Cheadle's in this, and no, he's not in this. He's only in it for 2 minutes. So hopefully Ayo's in it more than 2 minutes in the next episode, but we'll see. But we mentioned that part of the reason that diversity just in front of the camera isn't the be all. You need to have diversity behind the camera to make sure that the stories that are being told authentically. And the other big news I wanted to talk about this week is DC Comics announcing that at least one movie I was very excited for and another movie I could really give two shits about. We're actually not going to be on the docket anymore, and that's James Wan's Trench movie and Ava DuVernay's New Gods movie. And I was very, very upset about the New Gods cancellation. Like I said, I could give two shits about the Trench. I was surprised that they even greenlit the Trench out of Aquaman, to be honest.
Is that not a movie based a spin-off from the monsters in Aquaman?
Just the monsters.
Yeah, okay.
No Aquaman. We're just going to follow some fish monsters.
Aquaman is already a tough sell, and then they're just going to use the background. They're like, no Aquaman, but we got the background. The seaweed.
Yeah. So we're going to just put Trench aside for a second. Although it is wild that James Wan, he wasn't directing it, but he was producing it. He and Walter Hamada, who is the president of DC Films, are like best friends. So for Walter Hamada to cancel a James Wan movie, what does that say about the future of DC? But anyway, that's a whole other podcast.
Or their friendship.
Yeah, or their friendship. Maybe there's some rocky water. Maybe Ray Fisher got James Wan on his side, and like Walter Hamada's like, "Fuck you, James Wan."
Yeah. Side with Cyborg.
That would make as much sense as anything else.
But no, let's talk about the Ava DuVernay New Gods movie, because 3 years ago now, when that movie was announced, I was so excited because I think me and Sean did a whole episode about just like the possibilities of a Jack Kirby-esque fourth world movie with Ava DuVernay at the helm and Tom King writing it. Tom King, whose Mr. Miracle comics are some of the best comics ever written. At the time, Ava was saying like her favorite character of all time is Big Barda, and you have Tom King on board. Like it was going to be a legit fourth world Kirby-esque. This is coming off of Ragnarok, where you proved that you could have Kirby on screen and not some like watered down monochromatic version of Kirby. That's not a shot at the Snyder cut, but like full on bright colored Kirby fourth world characters. It's been in development hell for 3 years, and finally they pulled the plug. One, were you excited about an Ava New Gods movie, and how do you feel about not now getting a New Gods movie?
I was excited because I love Ava's work too. She's so good. And I feel like Big Barda would have been fun. It's been fun to see a tall lady on screen. Like, let's do it. Everyone's so short. So that would have been cool. And I was really hoping that we'd get like Oscar Isaac in that film, and I was like thinking of all the potential for it. And it sucks because that would have been like the first DC movie directed by a Black woman, and now like that's not happening. But I don't know, they were trying to say the reason why is because it was connected to the Snyderverse, so that's why it's been canned. But at the same time, I'm like, has this been they knew it was going to be canned for a while, and that's why they gave her that Naomi pilot she's doing for the CW? Like, that's such a downgrade if that's like
Naomi's a great character, David Walker. We're not saying Naomi's not a good character, just putting that out.
Yeah, I know. I want to say he's not
the downgrade is going from a big budget DC movie to a CW show, I think.
Yeah, and especially when like CW's audience, they really try to hit the the teenage / early 20s market. That's where they try to hit, and I'm just like, I don't know, I wanted to see a really awesome film from I don't know, it sucks.
Yeah, Warner Brothers, I guess they don't want anything good or anything led by good people.
And it's not a good look that like 2 movies in development with POC filmmakers are the ones that get canceled.
Oh, especially when you go back
Ava,
to Rick too,
Rick
for the Flash.
Yeah, it's upsetting to think about when stuff like this happens. I mean, for one, the last person it should have happened to is someone like Ava, who's already been dealing with so many obstacles that are just industry related and systemic in Hollywood. But I think about those like mediocre ass showrunners for Game of Thrones who got to do what they did for seasons, like by the seat of their pants, and were like lauded, and then just got to throw it away in a garbage can at the end. And then I'm like, I know it's a huge leap, but at the same time, that Snyder Cut was so much better. What the fuck are y'all planning to do with Joss Whedon's Justice League that it took away from Ava X King mashup that would have been just pure sucre? I mean, it would have been everything that would have put WB up next to, or the DCEU next to the MCU a little bit. But
it's funny too, because I think the New Gods movie, I think, was not related to the Snyderverse at all, right? Because there was no connection to Zack Snyder. At that point, Zack Snyder had already left the fold, right? There was no Snyder Cut when they announced New Gods. And, Darkseid made no appearance in the original version of Justice League. So they had carte blanche to create a Darkseid and a Granny Goodness and a Desaad and the whole Apocalypse world. Orion, Mr. Miracle, everything. God, it's just saying it makes me upset. So it was completely divorced from the quote-unquote Snyderverse, which was a good thing, because this was when DC had announced, like, we're going to just let filmmakers do whatever they want. And, part of the reasoning for this announcement has been because, well, we just had Darkseid in the Snyder Cut. We don't want to confuse audiences, even though they also just said we're a multiverse and we can have multiple versions of Batman in 3 or 4 movies. So the messaging is very confused, because if the idea is the New Gods movie isn't going to look like the Snyderverse Darkseid, and that's going to confuse audiences, so we have to cancel the New Gods movie, even though the Snyderverse is not canon and we're not making any more Snyderverse movies. And the whole thing that kind of pisses me off about this, as much as I've been apologizing for the Snyder Cut over the last few weeks, the thing that always bothered me about Snyder's movies has been its fan base, and not the entire fan base. Put your Twitter machines down. I know there are some good Snyder fans who've raised money for suicide prevention, but there's also a really loud contingent of Snyder fans who, to Brittany's point earlier about entitled fandom, got what they've been clamoring for 3 years, and instead of like appreciating it, pivoted right away to restore the Snyderverse. So much so that when Warner Brothers put out a statement under the hashtag Stop Asian Hate about raising $7 million to anti-Asian hate crime causes, we're being spammed with Restore the Snyderverse tweets, on their Stop Asian Hate tweets. And apparently...
Objection relevance.
And apparently, like, Ava had been getting shit from Snyderverse fans because Ray Porter, who played Darkseid in the Snyder Cut, had to tweet out, like, hey, lay off of Ava DuVernay. On top of all of that, canceling the New Gods is just fuel for the Restore the Snyderverse fans, because it's like, to them, it's like, oh, this is a sign. They're getting rid of the non-Zack Snyder Darkseid to make room for more Snyder Darkseid. And again,
Right.
it kind of makes me feel icky for enjoying the Snyder Cut because it's like, this is what it's going to lead to.
Same,
right?
yeah. It's bittersweet now. Also, this is all Sonic the Hedgehog's fault. After like the people quite literally weaponized hashtags to get the whole damn thing redone, which was so nuts. I don't know that we've ever seen it to that effect. Not in my lifetime. I had never seen it ever done like that, where almost like a video game, they're going to take it back to square one and then release a better version of it. Like this was a hot fix. It was a patch. Like what?
And meanwhile, I'm sure all those CG artists were like putting in 40-hour days just to get it done.
That's terrible.
Right, and people don't understand that you can rally behind and champion some really problematic hashtags and campaigns that you don't realize will drag a ton of creative people down with the people who are making like the more corporate decisions. But yeah, some of the Snyder fan base can be really insufferable, like edgelords as well. And I'm just like, how are you guys like what? It's exhausting, really.
I take all this. I just want to say quickly, I take all this under the running joke of DC will find new ways of not knowing what it's doing. Even if it makes advancements with a pretty good Snyder Cut, they'll find a new way to seem totally confused. But I think like there'll be karmic justice. I mean, they're going to be really sad when Chloe Zhao's Eternals wins all the awards and is a game changer, because it's kind of analogous in a lot of ways. They both set up these weird godlike teams. They're big lifts, they're big story problems, and are similar in the Marvel and DC universes, the Eternals and New Gods. There's a lot to do there, and there's a non-white woman as the director. But Eternals is going to happen, and you know all the buzz is it's going to be something extra special. So I don't know, like DC tries so hard to get on, use the Marvel template for things, and then they don't back off on like.
What are they doing? Like, what's the next plan? So there's no Justice League movies. Suicide Squad's coming out. What the hell is that? I'm sorry. I'm like the least drawn into or least attracted to this hodgepodge of wacky and weird characters coming together. So what are we, Suicide Squad? I'm so sorry. It's so unappealing, and I'm sorry for folks listening who are a huge fan of the James Gunn trailer and shit, and it's like it looks so dope. What? I was just like, what the fuck is this? Is a dude named Arm Falling Off Guy or some shit? Like, what? I was never the most I would be a fan of is Mystery Men, and that's it. That's where it stops for me. That's my shit. That's my childhood. Right? Ben Stiller and everyone. But like
that version of stupid ass heroes coming together is your thing? Okay. I'm just
it works for me. Okay. Yeah, it works for me in that it's you're so on brand, I get it. But I don't know. I think my frustrations come from not understanding where DC is going. Like what's happening? Is the Suicide Squad going to lead this? Because remember, we watched the Avengers be the leaders of the several phases and whatnot, or the lead up to the Avengers coming together.
And that's what actually confuses me and bothers me, because I was excited honestly about the direction DC was going when they were moving away from interconnected movies. Because we were saying about Marvel just a few minutes ago, it is a lot to kind of navigate 25 plus movies and 10 years of continuity, and everything that happens in this needs to inform everything that happens in that. And then directors aren't allowed to kind of put their stamp on things because it has to ultimately look like you can binge it on Netflix, right? Or Disney Plus at this point. Mm-hmm. And so like when DC was like, we're going to do a multiverse and have wildly different directors takes be wildly different from each other, that jives with me. Because I'm like, I don't need, like I always said, the reason I was so distraught over the Snyderverse was when that was going to be the only version of DC characters we were going to get for a decade, right? Like, I can accept the Snyderverse now knowing that it's its own thing and that not every movie has to be the kind of like color template and stuff of the Snyderverse. Now they're saying the movies are going to be interconnected, but it's going to be an interconnected multiverse. So that means the only thing that's not connected is the Robert Pattinson Batman. And that's on Earth too. But then and now everything needs to have its own HBO Max show because they're giving John Cena his own show spinning out of Suicide Squad.
Oh my gosh.
Which is going to be its interconnected thing. But then they're also giving...
Yeah, we definitely need New Gods more than the Peacemaker show.
Yes.
I'm just going to say that right now. I mean, that's like mathematically something we need more.
Within the same sentence, they say the reason they're moving away from New Gods and Trench is that they want to focus on these interconnected multiverse movies and have them kind of live in both HBO Max and on movie screens But then Robert Pattinson's Batman gets to exist as its own thing. That's a cover
story. That's
spinning off a Gotham City Police Department show. So they'll have their own pocket. And like when everything was its own universe, I was cool with it. But now they're saying there's going to be its own universe, which is Batman. And then everything else is going to be a multiverse. And now Michael Keaton's saying, maybe I'm not going to be in the Flash movie. So I'm like, what is happening?
And you dropped a project with one of the best filmmakers in the last like multiple decades. Yeah. You really let go of Ava and said, John Cena needs his own show.
Ava, you get a
That's
CW
what we're gonna
show.
do.
But yeah, you don't.
What the fuck? Y'all really don't know what you're doing.
No, I think there's this constant thing for them where they like don't want to be like MCU, but then at the same time when they don't have a clear like path structure, they like part and they're like, okay, maybe we do need to be a little bit like the MCU, but then it's like I feel like they're constantly going back and forth between let's not do what the MCU is doing and then let's actually do what the MCU is doing. And it's frustrating because it's like there's people who don't read comics and they are just the people who are going to the movies. Like those people are like they're like DC's whatever because of what they're seeing from the film side. And it's frustrating for people who, you know, have actually at least read some of the comics or at least watched a lot of like, you know, DC animation, whatever. Like you're like, no, there is good potential for like great DC stories as a whole. But when, you know, general audiences are just seeing like between the MCU and the DCEU, yeah, of course MCU is more popular because at least it feels like they have a plan and they have like, you know, they know it seems like they know what they're doing versus DC. So it sucks because it's like both comic book companies have great stories and great characters.
They could learn something. DC can learn something. They could literally steal MCU's moves word for word, bar for bar. Like you could do that. But you have different content.
Yeah.
You quite literally have different people doing different things. If that structure worked, you could make it work for you because now you're like assed out. You don't know whether you're coming or going. And like you said, Brittany, you're just like flip-flopping between should we go in this direction or maybe not, and then you've got like backdoor projects, you've got things that you're sidelining, you got shit that you're canceling. So what are you really trying to do? Just
this weekend, Godzilla v Kong Dawn of Justice opened to $49 million in US in the middle of a pandemic. Plus it being available for free on HBO Max still made $49 million in US alone.
That's wild.
Like we haven't had a movie make more than like $9 million on the box office in like a year. And Godzilla v Kong Dawn of Justice, I'm going to keep calling it that, is the fourth movie in the Monsterverse. And it's each movie since the 2014 Godzilla is just getting bigger and bigger in terms of box office, in terms of clout, in terms of fandoms and stuff. So much so that like I think there were a bunch of Godzilla v Kong Dawn of Justice fans on Twitter that were mocking the Snyderverse fans because there was a hashtag going around called Continue the Monsterverse. And like you don't even need the hashtag because Warner Brothers is definitely going to continue the Monsterverse after making $285 million worldwide in one weekend. So I haven't seen Godzilla v Kong Dawn of Justice.
I have.
I think they released it at a good time though, right? Like people are getting vaccinated. We're on the tail end. I don't want to say tail end, but 2020 was everything that was damaging to everyone's lives and to so many industries. So I feel that they're also lucky in the timeline, like in how they were able to release it.
But the fact that like it made that money when you could just watch it on HBO is wild to me. Like,
yeah,
I'm halfway vaccinated. I'm not as vaccinated as Britney.
Yeah, she is fully. You're halfway. I'm not at all. We've got like a spectrum here.
I'm not as vaccinated as Britney yet, but I'm still not going to. Especially if I could watch it at home, I'm still too scared to take my ass to a movie theater.
Yeah,
but it blows my mind that it made $300 million and people can watch it for free if they want to.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I only saw the first Godzilla with Aaron Taylor Johnson, so I kind of went from that to this one because I don't like monkeys, so I have not seen Kong. So I was already going into this rooting for Godzilla because just monkeys terrify me as well as birds, and and yeah, I was just like, this is cool, and I don't know all like the extra Godzilla lore from the older films, so I was like, oh, there's a Robo Godzilla, and that's why I
spoilers.
Sorry, and I tweeted it.
So great.
They need to keep these things on subscription services because when I'm fully vaccinated, I'm not going to a movie theater. I don't know when I'm going to go to a movie theater for a while. Like, no, please keep these on these services. I'm not walking into anything. I'm going to wear a mask for the next 15, 20 years, sure. But I mean, like really, like you said, the money thing. That's why they're making their moves and their choices the way they are. Like,
I wanted to ask just because I was curious. I mean, with a movie like this coming out, do you folks miss movie theaters? Have you? I mean, have any of you been to one? I haven't been to one. I mean,
but I miss theaters.
No.
I haven't been to one.
This huge movie that was obviously meant to be like maybe in a different world. You see it with friends. It's really big. The sound is really big.
In the theater,
I've never been that person who like needed the surround sound experience. Like Christopher Nolan, you're my man's when I'm coming after you again. These like, not everything has to be inside a movie theater. When I think about a film like Endgame, though, I am so appreciative of the fact that I got to sit there with my wife and freak the hell out over the whole damn experience and see all these YouTube videos of people freaking out. These are cultural inflection points that have to happen in a theater. Because it's it's a multi-year story that crescendos. Godzilla versus King Kong, I'm going to sit back and pop some popcorn and chill in my living room. I mean, there's a large enough TV there, that's totally fine. But there are some folks who are really about like, yeah, I want to hear Godzilla like stepping right next to me and shit. And I'm just like, I don't care for that. I don't know. I know the experience is essential for a lot of folks, but I don't know. It's weird.
I'm with Jamal.
Taste and
like,
preference for that have drastically changed since the pandemic.
I do.
I'm so happy being at home.
Experience because I love go. I mean, I would go by myself on like a Tuesday morning 10:00 showing and just watch a movie by myself.
Yes.
Sure,
in the audience. Like I could probably do that because like I used to do like the COVID version of a movie theater where I was like the only dude in the entire auditorium with the whole screen of myself. But I do miss that experience, but I don't miss it enough that I would risk like going anytime soon. Yeah. And there is no, to your point, Jamal, there's no movie that compels me.
I might risk it for is it, how do you say it? Shang-Chi? Is that the actual way to say it?
Oh, Shang-Chi? Yeah.
Is it Shang or Shang-Chi?
Shang-Chi. Well,
which one, Dominic?
Shang-Chi.
Dominic, which one?
It's both.
Yeah, see, so
doing a little extra exoticization of the word, which is an interesting topic we can take up with other words like Beijing. But okay, so something like Shang-Chi.
Okay. I would risk it for that movie. I'm sorry. I would risk going to the movies for that.
Fascinating.
Didn't Justice League come out or no? Was Justice League in theaters or only HBO Max?
It was just HBO.
Okay, even if that came out in theaters. No, like I mean, I loved it. I loved it on HBO. I will rewatch it like a dozen times here at home. But it's so strange. I no, the build up for things too. If a movie is suddenly announced and like there was none of that yearly build up, and again, I think about the MCU and Keith, you mentioned earlier the like how the DCEU is doing their own thing. And they're having like it's not so combined and not so reliant on other storylines like the MCU. I still feel heartbroken that I will never get to see the Snyderverse and the Justice League and all these things play out in other films, and it's because of my obsession with MCU movies. Yeah. So the way I was treated in that world, I'm like, oh yeah, we're gonna continue. Wait, what? I get no closure, so I don't feel good about that.
I mean, I would be interested in like Ben Affleck's Batman movie. Like I kind of wish that ultimately happened because I do think Ben Affleck's a good Batman when when his heart's in it, and his heart clearly wasn't in it in the reshoots for Justice League, and that's why like when he was like, "Peace, I'm out of here," it made sense. But then when you see him fully engaged, like when you see the Snyder Cut version of Batman, yeah, wow, I would have liked to have seen him and Joe Manganiello go at it in a Batman movie. But I am also happy that they're not continuing the Snyderverse because I know where the story was going to go. And I don't need a story in which, Lois Lane dies and Superman turns evil. Like,
yes.
So in that sense, I'm glad there's no more Snyderverse because I don't need that.
The nightmare.
You want that? Go play Injustice. I don't need to see.
Yeah,
that is so true. I don't want to see Jared
Leto. It makes me so mad.
That's great.
But see, Jamal, we live in a society.
There were people who were just like, did you see Jared Leto in the Snyder Cut? He needs his own movie. And I'm like,
horrible.
He was in the movie for 5 minutes.
I was loving that scene until he showed up. Like that was almost my favorite scene until he talked.
He's so just. It's also, rest in peace, Heath. but there will never, and it's just a hill I'm going to die on. There will never be a performance as moving as, well, not that there will never, but I don't know that anyone has been able to rival right now up to this point that performance.
I know.
And that's
I feel like there's
different discussion.
2 actors who could do pretty well, and I feel like DC doesn't have the balls to cast one of the 2, either Lakeith Stanfield or Aubrey Plaza as the Joker.
Oh,
yeah, nice.
Yes,
as the Jokers. Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
I mean, Lakeith Stanfield
he would be
Joker,
phenomenal.
so.
Yeah.
Aubrey
but
Plaza could
have
be
you
a
seen
punchline.
her in Legion?
Have
you seen her in Legion?
Oh yeah.
She could be an amazing Joker.
Yeah, I'm good on Joaquin Phoenix. Like, I already saw The Master. It's so funny too. People were so blown away by Joaquin, and I'm just like, have y'all not seen The Master? Did you not see like how amazing he was in that? I don't see Joker. I don't see The Master too. Like,
yeah, he was okay as a Joker too.
Right, I didn't. Yeah, I'm good.
It was okay. I mean, I think Heath Ledger like ruined the Joker.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah.
Like, because everyone else is just doing a pale imitation.
It's so natural,
yeah,
so caustic.
Or Mark Hamill's voice.
Right.
Mark Hamill and Heath Ledger kind of like made it their own, and then no one else. And then
people
touch
bring
it.
up
At least
Jack,
for now,
Jack
right?
Nicholson,
like
for nostalgia.
Yeah, I recently rewatched Batman '89, and I just, for nostalgia reasons, you can see I have the shrine to Keaton Batman in my case back there, but
no, of course not. This Batman conversation we got to have another day, because I have so many thoughts about just the cinematic representation.
Yeah, I know we don't have time to go down the Batman rabbit hole.
Can I circle back quickly and say Godzilla can crush them all?
What the hell?
And it doesn't even matter. All 5 Batman, Jokers in the Suicide Squad, you're just
doesn't
smushed.
matter what you're bringing.
Godzilla takes.
Well, give Batman some prep time.
I'm tired of the give Batman prep time and he can beat people.
Right, I know. What the hell is he gonna build?
People are saying that about Wanda.
He's gonna build a suit.
He would build a Mecha Godzilla.
I was like, no,
stupid bat on it.
Have you seen that tweet? They're like, no, Wanda would make him think that he's living in a world where his parents are still alive and like trap him there.
Holy shit.
I'm like,
crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, that's one way to beat Batman. It's true.
So, with that, what's nerd popping for everyone? Let's start with Jamal. What's nerd popping?
This is crazy. Attack on Titan comes to its final chapter, its conclusion, its series, the anime, the manga extravaganza of the last 11 years. I looked up the creator. Isayama is just 34 years old. I'm so envious of the fact that he did this in his 20s when he started this phenomenal anime. Its conclusion wraps on Friday, and that last chapter is gonna drop, and I'm just like, wow, there's so much of his writing and his style that I want to infuse in my own work. So that's gonna be nerd popping for a while for me. Attack on Titan.
Nice. Brittany?
I just saw the Bad Batch trailer, so I'm very excited for that. You know, me and Star Wars. Ming-Na Wen is voicing her character for Phoenix Ann. Is that Phoenix, right? So yeah, she's back. It looks really fun. I'm excited for that. And I just finished the last Star Wars book I was talking about the last time we were on was Into the Dark by Claudia Gray. It's amazing. Read it. Get into it.
Dominic.
I wanted to do a quick shout out to 2 events related to Asian American actors in the LA scene. I don't know if you heard about this one. First, Julie Lee. Pardon if I'm getting your name wrong. That's part of the story.
Oh yeah, at the awards.
There the LA Ovation Awards announced their nominees, and they nominated Julie Lee for a part. And good for her for getting nominated for an acting award. But they put up the picture of a different Asian person who was also in the show. And I just bring it up because it's not the hugest thing in the world, but it happens so often and we don't really remark on it so much. It happens to the guy when he shows up on MSNBC to talk about the wave of anti-Asian violence. They just credited a different guy. Also, just for my own part, like if you look up Dominic Ma, they have a picture of another Dominic Ma, which is fine. They just get that stuff confused, but it happens so regularly. It's a little absurd. And it caused this whole uproar, like East-West players withdrew from that theater alliance for a time. We'll see what happens there. Oh, and I also just want to mention, sort of related, this other Asian American actor I know, Kevin Hani, posted that his wife, Margarita Pigeon, won the award for makeup and hair in one of our favorite DC movies, Birds of Prey. So, if nothing else, Birds of Prey got an award for its fabulous makeup and hair.
Should have got an Oscar nomination, but...
Coulda. But we can agree they had pretty cool.
Yeah,
hair.
no, that's what I'm saying.
They've got lots of characters going on. They each have the distinctive style.
Yeah,
so
no,
what's going
I agree. I mean, production design, costumes should have had Oscar nomination for Birds of Prey.
Indeed. And Keith.
For me this week, we were talking about CW all episode, and there's a new show debuting on Wednesday that is a reimagining of the old David Carradine show Kung Fu, and it stars Olivia Leong. It's a modern retelling of the story, except now there's actually Asian people in it. And I actually got a chance to do a panel with the cast of Kung Fu and its showrunner Christina Kim. Hopefully we'll be able to have that on the Nerds of Color YouTube channel soon. So you can check out my conversation with the cast of Kung Fu. And it comes on the CW on Wednesday night, April 7th. So check that out. It's just funny. I feel like it's full circle because Nerds of Color kind of got started, or not started, but rose to acclaim because of the whole Asian American Iron Fist movement. And now we finally get to see like an Asian American martial arts show on TV.
Yeah, I remember that. That's how we ended up knowing each other.
Yeah, that's how we met online.
Yeah.
So yeah, check out Kung Fu on Wednesday on the CW. And that's that on that. How can everybody get in touch with you on the internet? Let's go back around the circle backwards. We'll start with Dominic.
Oh, I'm Dominic Ma. Dama, DOMMAH on Twitter and Instagram.
Britney?
You can find me at Hi Britney Monet on Twitter and all that. And also you can follow my other podcast, which is at BL_podcast, which is the Black Lightning podcast.
Jamal?
I'm on Twitter at XPROSPERE. I'm not going to change my name ever. Just going to have to live with it.
You can find me on Twitter at TheRealChow, _real_chow, and follow the Nerds of Color at the Nerds of Color. Go to hardknockmedia.com to find this and all the podcasts, including the essential podcast Southern Fried Asian, at hardknockmedia.com. Subscribe and download Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, everywhere you get podcasts. Give us a rating and a review if you do. Also, smash that subscribe button on youtube.com/the Nerds of Color. There will be some great interviews already there by Jamal, and some more coming up. Please like and subscribe to us there. Follow us on Patreon and GoFundMe. Support us on TeePublic. And until next time, fuck my country.
I second that.